Forget safe, forget tradition. This painting is about risk. I am just using two colors, including the most controversial of them all, black. So purists, look away. We are breaking the rules today. Ha! Hey, that rhymed. Anyway, I personally don't believe in rules when it comes to artwork, and I really think you are going to love the results of this piece. So what are we waiting for? Let's jump right in. Here I've got my watercolor paper, and I've cut mine down to be a square shape today just to change things up a little bit, but you of course are free to do whatever shape or size you want. Now I do have an outline drawing on here as well. Sometimes I find it helpful to have some sort of guide to follow, so let me pull out this darker version just so you can see what I've got going on a little bit better. Now if you enjoy drawing outlines yourself, you can pause the video and draw something similar onto your page, or if you'd prefer just to jump right into painting, I will have this available in my Etsy shop, and because I didn't take the time to show you how to draw it today, I am going to put this at a 20% discount for 1 week so that you feel like you can give it a try. I'll leave a link for my Etsy shop in the description of this video if you're interested. Then after you've either drawn this for yourself or traced the printable outline from my Etsy shop onto your paper using a light table or even just a well-lit window in your house, we are ready to paint. I'll just pull out my watercolor paints, some clean water, a paper towel, and of course a few brushes. You can use whatever sizes you have handy. Today I will be using a thin number 1 rigger brush, a number 4 round for some of the smaller spaces, and a number 7 for some of the larger spaces. All right, I'll just quickly tape my paper down with some artist tape, and then you can start painting on here. And just a side note, any of the supplies you see me using today, I will have listed in the description of this video, along with links if you're interested in looking into them more. Okay, let me just pull out this large number 7 round and we'll start putting some colors on our tray. And like I said earlier, something fun about this piece is the limited color palette. I am only going to be using 2 colors today. You of course can choose whatever colors you like. The first color I'm pulling out here is alizarin crimson. I'm making 2 piles of this though, one that is more concentrated and dark with more pigment, and then I'll have one that's more watered down that has less pigment, more water, and is a lighter value. Now that we've got our first color on the tray, we can actually start painting right now. We'll be using the wet on wet technique for the flower petals today. So the first thing I'll do is just take a touch of water from my brush wash bowl and paint that along this first petal. Now, my brush still has a touch of alizarin crimson in the bristles still, so I don't actually need to use that lighter watered down color from my tray just yet, but if you need to add some of that color, please feel free to do so. We just want to have a very light wash of paint on here, just a very soft, pretty, light pink. In fact, sometimes even just using the tainted water from the brush wash bowl can be enough color. You'll just have to be the judge here for what you feel like your painting needs. All right, now that I have this very light pink color on the petal, we can take a touch of the darker, more concentrated alizarin crimson and start applying that on here while the base wash layer is still wet. You can see right away as I start putting paint on here that it immediately starts to spread and blend into that wet water layer. If yours is not spreading as much as you would like, you might just need to use a little bit more water next time on the base layer. The more water you use, the more that paint is going to spread, which also can create a delicate balance. You need enough water to help the paint spread out, but not so much that you start getting pools or puddles of water on the page. That can cause the paint to dry at an uneven rate and then can create blooms on your page. Water control can take some time to get the hang of, but the more you practice, the more you're going to get the feel for what works for you. Now, as you can see, I didn't fill the entire petal all over with that dark color. I decided to focus that mostly around the edges of the petal, and then I left a lot of the middle area that lighter pink color. This next area that I'm painting in is more like a folded over part or the underside of a petal. So after I add the light pink watery layer on here, I'm going to add more of the darker pink so that it will stand out a little bit from the rest of the petal layer. But then I'll just continue painting in the rest of the petals in a similar way as I did with the first. You also might notice that I'm going to be skipping around the flower, painting in every other petal at a time. This is just going to allow for some drying time in between each petal, and then when I come back and paint the petals next to the first ones, these will hopefully be dry enough that they won't all start to bleed together. I kind of want to keep the petals separate and individual today so that they stand out in their own way. One more side tip that might help as you get going, when you start adding in that darker alizarin crimson, if you find you've got too much color on there or maybe it's bleeding a little bit more than you'd like, you can either use a paper towel to kind of dab off some of that color, or something that I like to do is rinse and dry my brush off and then use the damp bristles to sort of swipe at the color, and this just helps control it or maybe take some of it off. And that really is all there is to painting in these petals. The good news is that we kind of just get to keep using the same technique and paint them all in a similar way. This can be a very therapeutic process, so I hope you enjoy it. Now, as we continue on painting these, I also need to just say a huge thank you to all of you who left me sweet, kind, thoughtful, and encouraging messages last week. I was dealing with some personal things and was feeling pretty tired and burnt out, so I took the week off from creating a tutorial last week, but all of your kind words really gave me the boost I needed. Thank you so much for your support and for allowing me the time I needed to get back on my feet again. It truly meant so much to me, so a huge thanks. This is truly the best little artist community I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of. But enough of that, back to the painting now. I hope you're enjoying the tutorial so far. I like to try to have paintings on my channel for every level of artist, from beginner-friendly paintings that are more of a free-handed way and don't require any sort of outline, to ones like this that might be a little bit more advanced and can challenge and stretch your skills a little bit. If you find that these things are things that you're looking for and you're enjoying my painting and teaching style, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming tutorials. Okay, I'm just going to cheat a little bit here and speed up the drawing process a little bit using a hair dryer, and then I can continue painting in the remaining petals in pretty much the same way. But you know what? Maybe I am going to change things up a little bit coming up and add even more of the darker alizarin crimson to the rest of the petals so that they do look just a little bit different than the first set. With this petal, I really am going to add some nice dark concentrated paint right next to these two other petals. This is going to create a really nice contrast between all of these. All right, great job. That looks so good so far. And the good news is that the hardest part of this painting is actually over. It is smooth sailing from here on out. Now, before we switch over to the second color, let's just add one more finishing touch to these petals and then we can call them done. So I'm going to pull out the #1 rigger brush and take a touch of that paint and paint some nice thin vein lines in the center areas of these petals. Now this color doesn't need to be too dark, we just want a subtle hint of these. Now make sure that your petals are completely dry before doing this though, otherwise they will just start to bleed and blend into the petal. And be careful not to overdo this part or put too many of these lines either. This should just be an accent to the piece, we don't want it to become the focal point. I really like the addition of those vein lines, and even though that is a very small and subtle detail, it really adds to the piece. Okay, I think we can pull out our second color now, and this is where some people may say that I am breaking the watercolor rules. I'm going to be using some pure black as a background accent color for this flower. This is a nice, dark, concentrated ivory black color, and I switched my brushes out as well. I will be using the #4 round for this next part. The good news here is that if you have the outline drawing on your page, all you have to do is follow the lines and shapes that we already have on here. I'm just going to be painting the leaves in this background area a pure black. I'm not doing anything fancy here. I'm not creating a gradient of values. I'm not painting this wet on wet. We are not even having to worry about water control. I'm literally just taking the black paint and painting within the lines. The one and only thing that you could try to add in some extra detail in here and there, but is totally optional, would be to purposefully leave some white spaces along some of the leaves, like maybe where the center vein line might be or something. That just would kind of break up the solid black color a little bit. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that either. I'm just going to be focusing on the leaves first. We'll save all those frilly little lines for last. And actually, I might show you a cheater way to do that too. We are just breaking rules all over the place today, but I think it's kind of funny that some people consider it even a quote rule, unquote, to not use black or even white paint in watercolor paintings. In my mind, the whole point of artwork and being creative is that there is no rules. In fact, I've even heard some people say that it's not real art if you use an outline drawing to help you paint too, that it really only counts if you paint freehanded. And I disagree with that thought process as well. You should be able to do and paint whatever and however you want to. That is the whole point of creating artwork. Everyone can have their own way of doing things, and that doesn't make it the right way or the wrong way. To me, as long as in the end you love what you've created, that is all that matters. Now, that was a little bit of a rant, but that is just my personal opinion, I guess. Take it for what it's worth. All right, let's just sit back, relax, and enjoy painting in the rest of these black background leaves, and then we can move on to the final finishing touches. Okay, I think that's it for the leaves. Let's finish this painting off. Now, first off, let's paint in the center stamen area of the flower. I'll just pull that rigger brush out one more time, take a touch of the black paint, and quickly paint in the round tops or dots of color on the tops of the stamen lines. Great job. Now, as you can see, the rest of what's left to paint on this piece is just some thin lines, both for the stamen lines as well as some background accents. Now, if you want to use this rigger brush for these, that totally works really well to paint in some nice thin lines with. I'll do a couple of these really quickly so you can see, but then I'm also going to show you a cheater way if you want to try that instead, or if you feel like it might be easier for you to do instead. All right, at this point, you can continue on with the rigger brush. If that's working well for you, then go ahead and finish this off. But if you want to try something a little bit different that may or may not be easier, you can simply draw the thin lines on using a thin marker. I have a couple of different brands here. Really, any type will work, just a nice black thin marker. Now, this might work well if you feel like you don't have a super steady hand with a brush, and I think this creates a little bit more control. So you can choose what's best for you. I think at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and finish drawing in the rest of the loose background lines, and then I'll draw in the stamen lines as well that connect the top black dots down to the center of the flower. And if you don't follow the pencil lines exactly, no worries with that either. Just go with the flow. You can always erase any leftover pencil lines in the end. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, I, of course, didn't follow all of my pencil lines perfectly, so I am going to take out a good eraser and erase any of those leftover marks that you can still see. But at this point, I think we can call this piece done. I think it really turned out striking. The black really sets off and complements that alizarin crimson, and it makes it just pop off the page. This was a super fun piece to paint, and it really wasn't super complicated either. So, break the rules like me and give this painting a try sometime. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.